All right, I am recording, and if you would please, if John jumps on, please just click the admit button to let him in, and if you can't, then I'll do it, that's fine. As it says, today, we're going to be start to go over the Murach Chapter 12, end of chapter exercise. We're going to look at it in just a moment and then start writing it. It's an updated TRIPS app. As it says here, we're going to go through this slowly, taking at least today and tomorrow. What we'll do today is we'll set up everything for the database. Let's see. And we'll get all the stuff in the models folder because the models folder is going to be extended quite a bit. All right, that's what I plan on doing today. All right, that's the only thing I've really kind of tested thus far. Then tomorrow, we will add the information for the controllers and the information for the views. All right. And then we'll see once we get to that point exactly where we are. All right. So. All right. So like I said, chapter 12 exercise, the updated TRIPS app today and tomorrow. All right. Then on Thursday, if we have anything left, I don't think we will, but if we do, we'll finish it up on Thursday. Otherwise, we'll get into chapter 13 and start going over this bookstore website. All right. Now, I did talk to Evan. We had a meeting last Friday. His class and my class were pretty much the same. He said that he was finishing up chapter 12 yesterday, and they were going to be going over, I believe, today they were going to start going over the same thing that we're going over. I could be wrong, but I thought that was what he said. All right. And finally, again, Friday will be our typical lab day, and we will continue with chapter 13 all next week. And I put it on the bottom here, but just so you notice, a week from Friday, there will be no class in observance of Good Friday or whatever you want to call that day. All right. Your chapters 8, 9 stuff is all due by midnight this evening. I believe just about everybody has turned it in. If there is something out there for chapters, I'm not talking now 10 and 11 or 12, 13, etc. I'm just talking about 8 and 9. If you don't have something graded in the grade book and you think you turned it in, then please send me an email and just say, hey, I looked at my grades and I turned this in, and I'll go back and look at it. I'm happy to do that. All right. This weekend, the chapters 10 and 11 work is due. All right. And then notice I'm not giving you any homework for Easter weekend. So the chapters 12 and 13 stuff, that will be due the 16th. Now, in talking to Evan, just so you know, he and I have a little bit of a difference in opinion on this. And I want to show you what he's doing, and I want to show you what I'm planning on doing. All right, that's the wrong one. Let me close that. All right. Wrong book, wrong class. Let's just bring this up. All right. You know where we are in here. I don't have to go over anything. By the end of next week, we'll be done with section 2. All right. And if this takes a little more time, that's not a big thing one way or the other. And then, like I said, Evan and I were talking, and what he's planning on doing then in section 3 is jumping right into chapter 16. And that's the only other chapter he's going to cover. All right. I have no problem with that, but I'd still want to lecture on 14 and 15. He is not planning on doing that. Now, to be fair then, what I will ask is for 14 and for 15, those 2 chapters, and I'll bring this up again later, but for 14 and 15, all I'll want you to do on there will be the written tests. All right. Now, if we have time, we can go over the projects for 14 and 15. I'm not even sure what they are. I think the one for 15, they actually have you do a blackjack game. And I don't remember what 14 is. But I'm not going to make you, so to speak. I'm not going to make you do the labs or the homework then for 14 or 15. We will go over the stuff for 16 and you will be responsible for that stuff. All right, we are still both trying to come up with a way that we will be able to deploy these things to Azure or to some other platform where it will not cost the student any money and the student will not have to put in or provide any kind of a credit card. All right, so that's where things stand, just so you're aware of it. All right, so with that said, back in chapter 8, we did this. Let's review this literally for about 1 or 2 minutes. All right, so we made this trip log thing. It's out there. You don't need to use it at all for the program we're about to go over. We're going to basically start brand new because even though it's based on the same thing, there are enough differences between the two that it makes more sense to start new than it does to try to bring the old one in and keep ripping out code and putting in new code. All right. But with the original one here, as it says, a data-driven web app that uses view models to pass data from controllers to views. So in other words, we were using view models and we were trying to minimize the use of ViewBank at that time. We also used the temp data. So we had this, you could come in, we pre-populated it with the 2 or 3 things that they had in here already. Then there was an add trip link. All right. And when you added the trip, you had your choice. You could put a destination in there and leave the accommodations blank. All right. I believe it was that. And then, so the stuff that was in here, the things to do and the where you were going, I believe both of those were optional. All right, we're going to change that around a little bit now. All right, that's all I'll say about that one. So let's just jump into 12 here and take a look at it. All right, as it says, update the trips log. In this project, you'll update the trips log app from project 8.1 so that it uses multiple related entities rather than a single trip entity. What does that mean? That means that really when you think about it, I believe the only table that we had in there for chapter 8 was a trips table. All right, now we will add additional tables. Not only that, when we do this, in our actual models folder, once we create the project in a minute, all right, once we do that, we're going to add 3 new folders underneath the models folder. We are going to add a data access folder. We are going to add a domain models folder where we were going to put our models like we had previously done right under the models folder, and view models. A view models folder. The reason for this is what we're trying to create here is we're trying to create what's known as a fat model and a thin controller, or thin controllers and fat models. What that means is, remember that in an MVC architecture, what you attempt to do is to take all of the database information and all the business logic, and you attempt to put all of that information into the model, all right, or into the model part of MVC. We have so far put a lot of our information into the controller, all right, and that will at least somewhat change in here when we do this. So just like before, how is this different? Well, this right here, actually, it looks pretty similar to what we had before. Maybe not identical, but it looks similar. But now notice when you click the add trip that's up here, now this is quite a bit different, okay? And it'll be a little bit, I should say at least a little bit different in here. Because not only do we have destination, but if you notice, there'll be a link in there for manage destinations, all right? And what we'll be able to do in this manage page, as it says here, You'll be able to manage destinations, accommodations, and activities. So it's pretty much what we did last time. Once you put that information in, you really didn't have a way of changing it or editing it. We are going to have that in here now. All right. And notice what it says, hold down on the control key. So in other words, if we pre-populated Whitefish, Montana, as they have in there, then if we had pre-populated it, okay, then this would be the activities that we could do. And as you notice, we can select multiple activities. Now, to do this, when you look at it here, here are our specifications. The first few will make sense. Some of the rest of them won't make a lot of sense. Especially if they make little to no sense, you may have to go back and reread chapter 12 again. All right. So as it says, there should be a destination entity. So in models, and in particular, in domain models, we will have an entity that will be called destination. All right. And as it says, it will have a one-to-many relationship with the trip entity. The trip entity is the one we had previously. We're going to create that one first. All right. Now, as it says, what that means is a trip can have only one destination, but a destination can be associated with more than one trip. So in other words, with the one to many, all right, I'm one person, I'm taking a trip to one destination, but that one destination can be visited by multiple different people. All right. So as it says in here, the foreign key in the trip entity should be configured so that if you attempt to delete a destination that's associated with an open trip, it should throw an error. So in other words, just like what we talked about with this books table, you shouldn't be able to delete a genre when that genre still has books underneath it. And in the same way, all right, you shouldn't be able to delete a destination when that destination has open trips associated with it. In the same way, as you can see, second bullet, there should be an accommodation entity, again, with a one-to-many relationship with the trip entity, just like destination. Then it says, that is, a trip can have only one accommodation, but an accommodation can be associated with more than one trip. Now, you could come in and say all sorts of stuff. You could come in and say all sorts of stuff. It's like, well, what if you were taking a trip and it was 1,000 miles and you were driving? You wouldn't get there in one day. You know, you'd stop someplace. We're not worrying about stuff like that right now. We're not handling that. All right. We're just assuming that a trip has only one accommodation rather. But again, that one accommodation, if it's a hotel, you're not going to be the only one who's staying there, is what they're saying. So the foreign key in the trip entity should be configured, all right, so that when you delete accommodations associated with a trip, the app sets the accommodation for that trip to null. Now notice the difference, okay? This is to delete a destination, period. So that's like saying I'm going to do delete. Let's say we had something, I think we put something in last time for Nashville. So now we're attempting to delete Nashville. Here, we're just attempting to delete an accommodation that's associated with a trip. All right. So it should set the accommodation for that trip to null. The difference between these is this is more or less the default behavior that it would throw an error, for lack of better words, kind of when the system is confused or it doesn't want to put itself into where it could be confused. All right, but we're going to also do it the other thing in here and make it null. Finally, we're going to have an activity entity. Notice that activity entity, as it says right there, it has a many-to-many relationship with the trip entity. In other words, one trip can have several activities, and one activity can be associated with several trips. Now, we talked about this. I don't want to go back and look at it again, but you should by now have an understanding between this class and the AWD1100 class, the C# programming class, of the difference between a one-to-one relationship, a one-to-many relationship, and a many-to-many relationship. All right. And again, with a one-to-one relationship, typically the reason that you have a one-to-one relationship between two tables is all the information could be stored in a single table, but it's getting so voluminous, meaning it's getting so many fields in it that it's easier to break it into two tables. All right. With a one-to-many relationship, that's kind of known as the nirvana of relationships. That's what you want. All right. And what that means is, all right, that every one entity, on the one side has 0, 1, or more things associated with it on the many side. All right. Finally, with a many-to-many, the key thing is we are still using in this class SQL Server. You know that. SQL Server is a relational database management system, or RDBMS. Being relational means that by default, it does not handle many-to-many relationships well. All right. So we're going to handle that ourselves, and you'll see how that's done. All right, next. Use Entity Framework Code First and migrations to create a new database named TripLog2. We already have a database named TripLog. I think that's what we called ours last time. So this one will be TripLog2. All right. Next, make sure to encapsulate your EF core code in its own data layer. That again will involve us coming in, and as I already mentioned, that what we're going to do for most of the period today is under our models folder, we are going to create 3 other folders. We will have a data access folder, a domain models folder, and a view models folder. There will be a lot of stuff that we put in here that was explained in chapter 12. And I don't know, maybe I didn't do that great a job of explaining it, but we're going to work with interfaces and a whole bunch of different stuff. All right. Next, update the trips page so that it allows a user to delete a trip. Well, again, when we did this originally, we didn't have this delete here, is what they're saying. That wasn't there. And we want to provide that. So you're planning on a trip, plans change, etc. All right. Then update the new trip page so that it allows users to select the destination and accommodations from drop-downs rather than entering them into text boxes. Much easier to do it that way. Then you don't have to worry about spelling, situations where you misspell the hotel, so it's in there twice when it's really the same hotel, etc. All right. Update the activities page so the user can select one or more activities from a select element that allows multiple selections. And with those multiple selections, they don't have to be contiguous. In other words, kind of what you saw on here. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different activities. We want to select 3 of those 7, but they're not contiguous. So as it says there, if we hold down the control key, we can click on any of these. If we decided we didn't want ice skate in there, we could just, with the whole control keys still highlighted, we could click on it again and it would no longer be highlighted in blue. All right. Next, add a manager page that provides a way for users to add and delete destinations, to add and delete accommodations, and to add and delete activities. All right, we want to allow you to do all that stuff. Finally, provide a way to access the manager page from the add trip page. So that's what we're interested in doing. So we want to be, in the next few days, be able to build this. And again, some of it is similar to what we did in chapter 8. Some of it is different. By and large, I'd say it's about 90% different. So rather than just bringing that 10% in, we're just going to end up starting from, lack of better words, basically from, from a brand new point of view, or whatever you want to call it. All right. And we're just going to start from the beginning, for lack of better words. All right. So with that said, let's do that. So the first thing that I want us to do is to come in and start a new project. So I'm going to come in here. I am going to create a new folder. I've already got one that's called trip log. That was from chapter 8. All right. So I'm going to call this one updated trip log. So updated, oh boy, updated trip log. So I've got that new folder right here. All right. And now I'm going to start up Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new project. And it is C#, Windows and Web. All right. As always, I'm going to type model in here, make sure it's C#, and I've got the model view controller. That's what I want. Next. All right. We are again just going to call this, all these the same thing. So this is going to be updated trip log. All right, for both the project and the solution, and we're saving it in that folder that is also called updated trip log. Now, it is by no means mandatory that you do it that way. All right, but that's just the way that I'm going to do it. So I'm going to select next. We're not going to, we're using 6. We're not going to do anything else in here with configuring, etc. Nothing else. So we're just going to click create. All right, I'm going to take this overview page and close it because we don't need it. All right, and the first thing that I want to do is I want to go into my app settings.json file right there. And I'm going to open that. You've seen this before. We've done this many times before. We're doing it again right here. So after our allowed hosts, we're going to put in a comma. Then on the next line, we're going to add our connection strings, which will be within curly braces. And it's going to be set up the same way we've been setting it up all semester. All right, since this is a trip log, I'm going to call my thing trip log context. Now, is it mandatory you call yours that? No, but we're going to be using that in different places in the program here. So if you don't call yours the same thing I'm calling mine, you're going to have to make sure that everywhere I use it, you use whatever you changed it to. So they told us to call that trip log 2. All right. And after we put in all of that stuff, we need our trusted connection to be set to true and our multiple active result sets set to true. Well, you can see it's going to scroll off the screen. So for now, at least, I'm going to make this smaller just so you can see everything. All right. So we've got our connection strings, trip log context, server equals, and then in parens, local DB, and then 2 backslashes, MS SQL local DB semicolon, database equal trip log 2 semicolon, trusted connection equal true, and multiple, I have to make it even smaller, sorry, multiple active result sets equal true. All right. Now, hopefully you can see that all right. I'm gonna leave that up there for a second. Again, they told you to call the database that we're about to create trip log 2. That's why I use that name. Let me double check my spelling. I believe that everything that I've got in there is correct. All right. So that's the first thing that we want to do in here. Okay, so I'm going to save this. In fact, I'll just do a save all. And unless one of you still is typing, I'm just going to go on and close this. All right. So the next thing that I want to bring up, in here, in fact, I'll leave it open. It won't hurt anything. So I want to bring up this program.cs file. All right. Again, we have done this before. All right. Right after our add controller with views, right after that, I'm going to come in here, put in a comment that says add EF core DI. And again, DI is dependency injection, and DI is the subject of, I believe it was chapter 14. All right. So I'm going to come in here and start typing. Not sure why they did that, but it did. I'll have to fix that in a second. Because this should just say options. Doesn't it like here? Third dot services and DB context. Okay, it's saying we need trip log context. We're going to make that later. All right. But I believe, again, I'm going to check my spelling, but I believe that's everything. And again, make sure this name is the same as this name, and make sure they're both the same as whatever we called this here. All right. So again, don't worry if there is an error message right there. I believe at least it'll work out just fine in a few minutes. All right. So after we do that, let's do another file, save all. All right. I'm going to close my app settings.json file. I'm going to close my program.cs file. All right. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my models folder. Right now, the only thing that's in there is exactly what you see. And in other words, what is in there right now is just the error view model.cs, which is what you get every time you create something and every time you create a new project. So we're going to go into our models folder and we're going to create 3 more subfolders. I'd like you to please do that right now. So I'm going to come in and right mouse click on models, choose add, choose new folder. The first one that we'll add will be called data access. All right. One word run together, capital D, little ATA, capital A, little CC, ESS. So that'll be the first one. We're not going to worry about that one right now, but that's the data access folder. The second one is the one we're going to work on in just a couple minutes. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add another folder, and that is going to be called domain models. Again, run it together into one word, capital D, lowercase OMAIN, capital M, lowercase ODELS, domain models. So we now have two empty folders in our models folder, data access and domain models. We want one more empty folder in here. So we're going to add one more folder, and that folder will be called view models. All right. So again, depending on how you look at this, this is my verbiage. It's not in your book or anything else. But what we're doing is we are segregating out our logic. We're breaking everything down. This is oftentimes, again, what you end up doing in programs like this. All right, when you start getting heavier and heavier and heavier into the database stuff. And that is you break everything down. We're modularizing, for lack of better words. All right. Okay, so that's that. And the next thing that I want to do in here is I want us to come in and I want us to open up the domain models folder. I want us to open up the domain models folder. And in there, we're going to add a few things. All right. The order in which we add these isn't necessarily going to matter, but the one that makes the most sense to add first inside of domain models is our trip. All right, because everything is kind of based off of trip. So if you would please single click on your domain models folder, then right mouse click on it, choose add, and go down to class. And we are going to name this class trip.cs. This is our first entity class. I want to say that again. This is our first entity class. So this will become one of the tables, ideally at least, if we do it right, later when we go in and we use the NuGet Package Manager console, all right, after we get everything done, and we come in and we add our Microsoft Entity Framework SQL Server and tools, etc. And then we do an add migration and an update database. All right, at the top, I'm going to put three using statements in here, using system system.collections.generic, and using system.componentModel.data annotations. And I believe I could probably get away with here only putting in the last one. The reason we need these, again, typically when you have a using system.collections.generic, then typically you also add into that a using system statement. All right. And anytime that you're going to be going in and decorating, and we're going to do some stuff in here, we're going to set up ranges and error messages, etc. And that's the annotation stuff. All right. So that's the beginning. So the first thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to try to put in some comments here. I probably haven't done a good enough job this semester of commenting things. So we are going to put some of these in here. All right. So this is going to be our primary key. And what is it? It's going to be public int trip ID with a get set. All right. So that, don't worry about that here. Okay. So that's the first thing. All right. Then what we need next is a destination. Now, we're going to end up getting that destination out of the destination table. All right. And we want to add that destination table here as a navigation property so we can pull that in. Plus, we want to add in the destination ID as a foreign key. All right. So that's what we're going to put in here next. And we will do some decorating here. So really, this is going to end up in just a minute. This is going to end up becoming a foreign key. All right, but I am going to put some decorating in here. All right. I don't know. That should be plenty big. That's 9,999,999. That's a lot more than I think. But these are all the possible destinations. That should still be pretty doggone good. All right. Move this over a little bit. All right, so there is our primary key and there is our foreign key. And now we want to add in our navigation property. Now, I don't know if I've ever seen a navigation property. If I have, I don't remember it where it was decorated. So I'm just going to come in and say public destination, destination, get set. Now we're getting that error right there because we have not yet created a destination entity. All right. It doesn't have a problem with this because it thinks basically it's just another field. But once we get into this, it is attempting to bring in another table that we have called another entity, I should say, entity class, whatever you want to refer to it as, all right, that we have not yet created. Now, we could have created that one first, but then we get to a point where we get a different error. So, like I said, just don't let it bother you, okay? We'll get past all this in just a bit. All right. So far, again, we put in the trip ID, we put in the destination ID and the destination. The trip ID is our primary key. The destination ID is going to be our foreign key, and the destination is going to be our navigation property. All right. We need some other stuff in here. We need a start date for our trip and an end date for our trip. Again, will be required. We will have an associated error message. Right. So required error message equal. That would fix it. Does that fix it? No. I'm not sure why we're getting that for the error message. Hopefully, again, it's going to wash its way out in just a minute. All right. In fact, yeah, we shouldn't have a comma there. There we go. Okay. All right. So this is going to be public date, time, and it'll be a start date. And we'll have our get set. Now, when we do this, okay, to worry about nullables, we will put a question mark in here. All right, and that should keep us from having any problems with that. So we've got a start date, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy those lines and I'm going to paste them below. Why? Because we need a trip end date as well. All right. Okay, so you can see, I'm not going to repeat them again, but you can see all of these. All right. The next thing we need to do is, maybe you remember this from earlier, maybe you don't, but this is going to again be our linkage, for lack of better words, the way that we link to the destination table, but we also have to link to the accommodations table. All right. Now, and I'm already broken the rule I told you before. So let's come in here, and this will be a foreign key, and we are making it nullable. All right. We also need in here, just like we did previously, we need a navigation property. So this will be public accommodation. Again, I'm going to get an error there with a get set. All right. And that's fine. We're almost finished here, but we need one more navigation property. Okay. And we want to link, and we're going to have that many to many that we talked about before. So there's one more thing we need to put in here, and I'll put in a comment that says navigation property to linking entity for the many to many relationship. All right. And that'll be a public, and it'll be a collection, iCollection. All right. And that should not give us an error because we previously added that line in there. Had we not added that, it would probably have flagged it right here. And under our ways of fixing it, it would have asked us if we wanted to come in and add that. So this will be a trip activity. All right. Trip activities with a get set. So when you look in here, you'll notice that all of the other entities we have not yet provided for in here. All right. Those being destination, accommodation, and trip activity. All right. Those we have not provided for those yet. All right. So it doesn't matter which one we do next, but I'll just do them in order here. So the first one we had was destination. So the next one we're going to do is destination. We've done trip, that's this one. Then we'll do destination. Then we'll do accommodation. And then we'll do that trip activity. All right. Okay. So like I said, the next one that we're going to do here, so I'm just going to do a file save all right now. I'm not going to close this. And the reason I'm not going to close this is I'm going to come in and make some more stuff in here. And the next one I'm going to make again is going to be destination. And as soon as I make that destination, my hope is that the error that you see right here in line 17 is going to go away. All right, so we can check on that by leaving this open. So I'm again going to go into my domain models, right mouse click, choose add, and choose class, just like we have been doing. And this will be destination.cs, hit enter. And notice once I've done that, that error is now gone. All right. And this is actually pretty small, what goes in here. Okay. But again, we need one using statement, which is again our using system.collections.generic. And the reason we need that in here is we're going to add a collection in just a moment. So first we'll say public int destination ID with a get set. And remember, this again, nothing new. So again, this is our primary key. So this primary key from this table is being brought in as a foreign key. Spell that wrong. As a foreign key into this table. All right. So that destination ID that you see in trips.cs is this one that you see right here, is what I'm saying. All right. And the only thing that it's really going to have is going to be a name. So public string name with a get set. And then we need a navigation property. All right. So we're going to say public iCollection trips get set, and that will be our navigation property. So we now have completed 2 of what we have to do in here. We did the trip entity and we have done the destination entity. And as you already saw, when we did this, when I went back to trip, that fixed this one. This is just a thing with telling me that it could be nullable. So the next one we have in here is accommodation. All right, that's fine. Then let's go in and make that one next. Again, it's pretty small. So I'm going to right mouse click on my domain models, do another add class. All right. And call it accommodation, ACCOMMODATION.CS. Accommodation. All right. One more time at the top, we're going to need a using system.collections.generic. All right. And again, this is not much bigger than the last one we had. We'll start with our primary key, which will be a public int accommodation ID with a get set. All right. Now we will have our other stuff. These are our accommodations. And we're not going to make any of them required. So we're going to say public string name with a get set, public string phone with a get set, and public string email, again, with a get set. And then finally, we need a collection of trips in here. So this again will be our navigation property. So public iCollection trips with a get set. Now, again, I'm going to save, but now I should notice going back to trip, now that error that I had with accommodation, that is now gone. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save all here, go back just in case you were still typing it in. All right. So we now have come in and we have added a trip entity. Then we added a destination entity. Then we added an accommodation entity. All right. And there's going to be 2 more activities that we want. I shouldn't say activities, 2 more entity classes that we want to create in here. The first one is going to be actually an activity. All right. So I think I did it, but just in case, I'm going to do a file save all. All right. And I'm going to come back into my domain models and I'm going to right mouse click on here and do an add class. And this will be activity.cs. Activity.cs, just like that. Again, as I've been doing at the top, using system.collections.generic. All right. And inside of here, just a few lines. Again, we'll have our primary key. And we'll have a name for the activity. All right. And then we also are going to have in here a navigation property to the linking entity, again, for the many-to-many relationship. Over. All right, and that will be a public iCollection. This will be of type trip activity. Notice we get an error. Well, you can probably guess what we're going to make in just a minute. And this will be trip activities, again with a get set. All right, so right now, I believe at least this hopefully is about the only error that we still have in here. Of course, I need a semicolon there because that was generating another error. But I think that's the only error we have in there right now because we have not created this yet. All right, so again, I'm going to do a file, save all. And then finally, with the last one that's left, we're going to come in and make another class called trip activity. All right. So again, I'm going to right mouse click on here, choose add and choose class. And this will be trip activity.cs. There it is. All right. I don't have anything in here where I'm making any collections, so I don't need any using statements in here. All right. So we're going to come in here and we're going to have a composite primary key. Now, hopefully you remember what a composite primary key is. A composite primary key is also known as a concatenated primary key. So basically what we're going to end up doing is we are going to come in here and we are going to bring in the trip ID and the activity ID. We're going to bring both of them in here. So it's a good right key here, huh? So we've got public int trip ID get set and public int activity ID with a get set. All right. And then we will need our navigation properties. And what are those? Well, those are the two tables that we're going to want to link to. All right. And they will be the trip table and the activity table. All right. We do not even need to bring in the primary keys in there. Why? Because we already have them here. All right. Now those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables. All right. Those are the 5 tables that we have put into our domain models. And again, with this idea, as I mentioned, of attempting to come in here and segregate stuff out, previously we would have taken all 5 of those tables and put them right underneath models. But there's other things that we are going to be creating under models as well. All right. So there's 2 more folders in here. And the next one that I plan on doing after we take a quick break is we're going to come in. I'm going to close this. In fact, I'm going to close all of these now. Yes, I want to save. Let's just do a file save all. Then close all of these. But the next one that we're going to come into and add things into will be our view models. We're going to add 3 classes into our view models. That won't take too long. And then when we get done with that, we are going to go in and we are going to work on the other one, which is our data access. That'll take a while. It's a little bit more complex. And I will tell you right now, there'll be a few things at least in there you probably won't understand. And if you say, can you explain those to me? My explanation will probably be kind of half-assed. Not because I want it to be, but I will tell you more than anything else, you're going to have to go back and read chapter 12 in the book to at least get an idea of what it's about. All right. So that's what we have on tap. It is 1 o'clock. Let's please take till 1:10. All right. And we'll pick it up at that time. They can go in and they can say, release or surgery anywhere on your body, doesn't even matter where it is. Yeah. She was kind of loud, she said, like, and I said, yeah, I said, yeah, why don't you say, I said, yeah, I do the same. Well, I would think there's, if nothing else, if he's got something to say, he can be better to say. I mean, it's the thing, so. Ah. Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I told like all of them to do it. Like all of them do it, how would I miss it? So it's going to be all this. So it's a lot of that. So he's like, I wasn't worried about it. He said I can stay as long as I'm eating, and he said it's no big thing. So. Right. Mhm. Okay. All right, well, I gotta get back to class anyway, so I just thought I'd call you back, if you know what. Oh, yeah, you can still call, either way, if I'm in class, I'll just leave a message. Okay, okay, all right, talk to you later, all right, love you, all right, bye. All right, it is 1:10, so let's continue on. So again, I'm going into view models now, and I'm going to add 3 view models. In the first one, I'm going to right mouse click, choose add, go to class. And again, it's recommended that you put on the end of these view model, even though you don't have to. The first one will be for the trip, so I'm going to call it trip view model.cs. All right. And so I've got this, and well, maybe I should have done the other one first, but I'm going to put something in here that's going to give us another error, but we'll fix it momentarily. All right, I'm going to say here, drop down view model. All right, and it's going to give me an error because that doesn't exist yet. We probably should have made that one first. It's okay. This literally right now, we have only 4 lines to type in. All 3 of these that we're going to create right now are small in size. They're all around 10 to 15 lines total. So we'll put in public trip with a get set, public int page number with a get set, public string destination name with a get set, and public. This will be an integer array of our selected activities, also with a get set. Now that's everything. Don't worry, because we're gonna keep going on with this. So if you have questions, hopefully they're going to be answered in just a couple minutes. All right, the next one that we're going to do is this drop down view model. So I'm just going to copy that name right now, and I'm going to right mouse click on view models again, choose add, go down to class, and again, this will be drop down view model.cs. So that's this one. Now, hopefully, now that error went away, as you can see. All right, I'm just going to do a file save all. Try that again, file save all. There we go. And this will be the drop-down view model. We will need a using statement in here, the one we've been using, no pun intended. So using system.collections.generic. All right, and again, 3 lines, public I enumerable not sure I'm getting an error right there. It's like I need another using statement in there, using our models. Okay. All right. 2 more. Public I enumerable. This will be accommodations, get set. And then finally, we'll have one more public I enumerable. And this will be activities, which is not, gotta make sure it's spelled right, with a get set. That's it for this one. All right. And I'm putting blank lines. You can, or you don't have to. Make sure you put in this line. All right. Without it, I was getting an error. And remember, when you've got something that's an I enumerable, all right, basically what it means is we are going to be able to run link queries against it. All right. So those are the first 2. We have one more that we're going to be using to manage things. So let me do a file save all here. All right. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to close this domain models. I don't need it right now, but I'm going to, in my view models, I'm going to add one more. So I'm going to add one more class. And that one more class is going to be called manage view model. All right. Just like the other one we had, it is going to inherit from drop-down view model. Now, we haven't really talked much about this because we haven't had the need to, but with, not drop down, sorry, drop down. But the reason this drop down stuff is going to be becoming important is, again, if you remember, one of the things that we talked about is we're going to want to be able to select destinations or whatever from a drop down list, as opposed to having to key in the information into a text box. All right, so 3 more lines here. Right, and there's that one. And please remember, we've talked about this before, that one of the reasons we use these view models is so that we can minimize the view bag and the view data that we're using. And when we use these view models, they will pick up the IntelliSense and they will have compile time checking. All right, so if we screw something up, you'll know it. You won't have to run the program to find it out. You'll know it right away. All right, so that's these. So again, I'm going to do a file save all, and I'm going to close these. So we started again by making our domain models folder, and we added an accommodations entity, an activity entity, a destination entity, a trip entity, and a trip activity entity. Then we went into our view models and we added a trip view model and a manage view model, which were both based off of the drop-down view model. All right. All right. Which means when you look at it, well, what do we have left? Well, we've got this data access thing in here. All right. So that's the one that is left. All right. Good, bad, or indifferent. I saved probably the worst for last. All right. Because there's, I don't know, about a half dozen files we're going to have to put in here, which we're going to start putting in just a moment. But before we do that, we're going to come in and we're going to create another folder underneath here that's called configuration. All right. So we're about to come in and create a folder in here called configuration. So I'm going to close this. And I'm going to come into my data access folder. I'm going to right mouse click and choose add and add a new folder. All right. That new folder is going to be called configuration. All right. And inside of the configuration folder, we're going to make 2 different configuration files. All right. Now, this, at least some of this, is going to be responsible for what we had talked about in the requirements, and that is for handling when you try to remove, for lack of better words, a parent when that parent still has children around. How are you going to handle it? All right. So we're going to configure the foreign keys on the first one so that they don't use cascading deletes, which means if you kill the parent, kill the child as well. All right. Okay, and if you don't know what I mean, just keep watching because this is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a class. And the first class that we're going to add, again, it's sort of a convention that anything you put in a configuration folder, you call it whatever you want, config.cs. So the first one we're going to put in here is going to be trip config.cs. All right, so that's the first one. All right, and I am going to come in here and put in a couple of using statements. All right, MD Framework Core. And don't worry, I'll explain why we're getting the error in just a minute. All right, whenever you do this stuff, and what I'm about to say, I'm preaching to the choir here. You all know this. But whenever you do this stuff, all right, sometimes you have to create something where when you create it, all right, it's going to cause an error because it depends on something you haven't created yet. All right, and if you say, I don't know what you mean, believe it or not, yeah, you do. But let's fix these errors right now. We're going to fix these errors by doing this. Let's go over to our tools. Let's go down to NuGet Package Manager and our manage NuGet packages for a solution. All right. You're very familiar with this. We've looked at it several times before. And I'm going to browse over to here and I'm going to put in here Microsoft Entity Framework Core. Usually you get away without using the core, but I'm going to use it anyway. So I've got Microsoft Entity Framework Core. I'm going to click here and I'm going to choose install. All right, and accept here. Then we also want the entity framework. What is it? It's core.tools, I believe. There's that one. So we want to add that one as well. So let's install that. All right, and finally, we will browse one more time, and I'm going to put in Entity Framework Core, and I always forget what this one is, SQL Server. So Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.SQL Server, and I'm going to install that one. Accept. Now, because I'm not a very trusting person with this stuff, I am going to close this. Then I'm going to reopen it and go over to my installed to make sure all three of them are in there. So installed core, core SQL Server, and core tools. They're all there. And notice now in here, my errors are now gone. All right, we could have done that earlier. Maybe I should have done that earlier. To be honest with you, in the end, it doesn't really matter that much. All right, okay. Okay, so we've got this class in here, and we are going to use something. I think we could leave it public, but I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to take this class and I'm going to make it what's called internal. All right, and internal is more like private, but it's something that's only going to be able to be used within the guise of where I am in the models here. And if that doesn't make any sense, that's probably about the best definition I can give you of it for right now. All right, because we've already worked with before. We have worked with public, we have worked with private, we have worked with protected. All right, and this is the first time we're bringing internal into this. All right, in this class, hoping it doesn't give me an error. All right, that's what I was looking for. So let's see. Entity type configuration trip. Okay, and they want another using statement in here. No, I didn't take it. Let's see. Oh, we have to put okay, we're using an interface because it starts with I, but we have to add what's in that interface. All right, so public void configure. All right. And the first thing we're going to do is I'll put a comment in here that says configure foreign keys. I don't want caps though. So they don't use cascade delete. Cascade or cascading, it doesn't matter. Delete. All right. And the key line that's in there is the last one that says delete behavior restrict. All right. There's restrict, and then we're going to do one more of these, and we're going to set it to set no. All right. And that literally will then allow accommodation, which is the other one we want to use in here, to be set to no. All right. That is actually it for this one. Now, I'll give you time to type that in, but I just want to mention, I'm going to change the screen for a minute and I'll change it right back. But if you're wondering, like, where the hell did you even get this stuff from? Again, that was in our requirements. In our requirements, when they came in and they talked about, where is it? The foreign key here should be configured so that attempting to delete a destination with a trip throws an error. That's the first one we just did. And here, the foreign key basically sets the accommodation for that trip to null. That's the second one that we did. So all we're doing in here is we're coming in and we're following the requirements that we are told to follow, for lack of better words. All right, and let me show you these two. There we go. That's everything. So that is the first config, and we have one more configuration file that we're going to need in here. So that was our trip config. We're also going to have a trip activity config. All right. And it's not going to look that different. I mean, I shouldn't say that, it will, but it's not much bigger than this. about the same size, around 20 to 25 lines. And again, what we're doing, at least in a way here, is we are pulling out some of the stuff we would normally put into our controller files, all right? And we are putting them instead in different folders into different files that are in our models folder, all right? So it's both segregation and it's integration. It's segregating in that we're pulling stuff out, but it's integration because we're putting all the stuff into the models folder or in one of the subfolders of the models folder. All right. Okay. So I'm going to do a file save all here, and I'm going to come into my configuration and I'm going to create one more class in here. And this one will be called trip activity config. Not trip config, which was our first one. This is trip activity config.cs. There's that one. So again, we've got a trip config and a trip activity config. And my guess is, looking at this, it's probably going to need these same three things in here. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. So I'm going to put those up at the top here. They're gray right now because, of course, we're not using anything yet. All right. And just like we did before, this is going to inherit from an interface, that being that entity type configuration, and that'll be trip activity. Like that. All right. And again, I'm getting the error because I have not yet put in the code that it needs. We're going to put that in right now. Again. There we go. All right. Now I might be missing something here. I want to see. An interface. Well, we're putting the interface in right now. So hopefully that'll again wash its way out in just a couple minutes. We'll see. Definitely doesn't like this. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now this stuff has already been defined, this composite key. All right. We already have that in our model. So basically we're just relaying that information out, for lack of better words. Now we have to set up the one-to-many relationship between trip and trip activity, and the one-to-many relationship between activity and trip activity. All right. Total of about 7 or 8 lines. And I'm hoping that that'll get rid of that error right there. Doesn't like something in here. Well, let's just keep going. I want to see if it'll work its way out. Fix that. Now, when I'm doing this, rip, this should be activities, but for some reason, it wants me to put it in singularly. I don't know why. It doesn't like that either. Well, that's what it asked for before. So let's see if I can figure out what that error is. I don't want to generate any more fields here. We'll have to look at that in just a moment. In fact, this is a one-to-many relationship, not a one-to-one. That might be the problem here. That should have a T in front of it. Well, thought that would fix it, but it didn't. There we go. All right, so I have one error here that we have to try to fix. Public class trip activity config, entity, type configuration, trip activity. That's all correct. Ah, I spelled it wrong here. See that? I spelled activity wrong. That's on me. So let's see if we can fix this. I'm going to right mouse click on here and choose rename and try to make it trip activity, which is spelled correctly. ACTI. Activity. That's how these can get screwed up. And this is spelled wrong too. There we go. So I changed the name here. I had misspelled it originally. I wanted to say trip activity config. All right. And I changed it there, which meant I had to change it here as well. So as far as I can tell, at least, all of the errors that were in here are now out. All right. We're not done yet. Okay. There's at least a couple more things to do here. So we have come in and in our data access folder, we created a configuration folder. And in our configuration folder, we added a trip config.cs file, and we added a trip activity config.cs file. I'm going to do a file save all and close both of these. All right. Now I want to create about a half dozen more files here, but I don't want them to be under configuration. I want them to be under data access. And if you were to turn around and say, okay, well, that's fine. Why are you doing it like this? All right. I'm not even going to lie to you. I started doing this myself and I got very confused. So I went in and I did look at the author's key to see how they had set it up. And I tried to go back then and meld that. So in other words, take a look at that in unison to what we'd already been working with. All right. In other words, I went back and I looked at all that stuff back in with chapter 12. That's why I said, you know, no matter what, if you haven't read the chapter, you're probably going to be confused. And I will tell you, there'll be even more things. There's even more new stuff or some more new stuff that we're going to cover in chapter 13 when we do this bookstore website. All right. So again, hopefully this is all going to work its way out very shortly. So like I said, I'm going to come in here and add about a half dozen files in here. All right. I don't believe that the order in which we add these half dozen or so files is going to matter. So I'm just going to do them in alphabetic order. All right. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, because this is different, so please watch. Again, don't be under configurations. No, be right under data access, right mouse click, choose add, but we don't want class here. We want new item. And we want to choose interface. Remember what an interface is. All right. An interface in C#, like Java, like most object-oriented programming languages, only allows you to inherit from one other class. However, you can inherit from as many interfaces as you want to or need to. So we're going to add an interface here. All right. And this interface is going to be called, they always start with I repository. Capital I, capital R, lowercase EPOSITORY, like this. As we have been doing many times, I'm going to do a using system.collections.generic at the top. All right, most of these files are going to be, most of them, fairly small in nature. This first one, we got about 10 lines to type in here for this first one. All right, so now I'm going to have to fix this. It's giving me all this goofy stuff and it doesn't like what I'm doing because I'm referring to something we haven't created yet. All right, so don't worry about that error by query options. We'll do that one next. All right. Now, any file that implements this interface, this iRepository interface, is going to have to make sure that it accounts for all of this stuff. What does that mean? That means that it's going to have to, anytime that you implement an interface, all right, that what you're going to have to do, and I think the reason I'm getting all these errors by the T is I needed to come in here and say like that. There we go. All right. That any method that is going to implement iRepository is going to have to add these methods that are shown here. All right. And again, the only errors we're getting in here right now are in our usage of query options. All right. So let's go in and do the query options next. That'll be a class. All right. But hopefully, at least as we go through there, it's going to remove some of the errors that we have in here. So file, save all. I'm just going to leave that open. I'm going to come back into here, into my data access, and add this. Now can be a class, and this one will be query options with a capital Q and a capital O for options, like that. At the top, we are going to have our using system and using system.link.expressions. Some of this stuff that's in here, you're going to look at it, you're going to like, I even read chapter 12 and it wasn't in here. What I've been doing is going out to learn.microsoft.com to try to find out better explanations than the ones that are given in the book, if they're even given at all in the book. All right, that is everything, and I want to see if that, remove that error and that error. Okay, I guess I had that in there incorrectly. So in the repository that we created, we had an insert, an update, and a delete. This is going to be used or being used in conjunction with us being able to do CRUD operations. All right. And in here, we also had something of type query options. That query options basically, again, is defined right here. Now, there's about 4 more files that we have to type in here. None of them are real big. Well, I shouldn't say that. The repository one is pretty big. We'll do that one last. All right, we're going to make another interface file right now. So I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to close these for now. And I'm going to come in here and right mouse click on data access and choose add, and again, choose new item and interface. Remember, interfaces always start with an I. So this will be I unit of work.cs, I unit of work.cs. All right. The good news is this is not going to have many lines in it. The bad news is, all right, we didn't do the repository yet. And all 4 of these lines, these first 4 lines are referring to repository. So we may get errors on the next 4 lines. If we do, they'll be fixed in a few minutes. I don't want there to be an I there. In fact, I'm going to just take this here and I'm going to copy it down 3 times and make changes. All right, so we've got repository trip. Then we have destination. Then we have accommodation. And finally, we have activity. Now, couple things to notice here. Again, we're getting the error because we don't have the repository file yet. We'll do that in a couple minutes. But one thing, hopefully, that you noticed from here is that all 4 of these are read-only, meaning they have a get but no set. All right. And basically, it's because we don't want to be able to set those things here. They're going to be set someplace else. We're just reading them in here. So we're bringing them in as read only. We need one more line here. Sorry. Just like that. All right. So we'll do the repository, even though that's the longest one. It's not super long. It's about 50 lines, but we'll do that one. We'll do that one. Then we'll take another break. Then we'll come back and do the last 1 or 2 that we have to do. All right. And that will be it for today. We'll pick it up tomorrow then, and we will do the controllers and the view files. But I'm going to do a file save all here. And I'm going to come in and do the repository, which will be a class. repository, repository. .cs. Now, notice, okay, oh, it hasn't removed them yet, but it will hopefully in just a couple minutes. All right, we're going to start with some using statements at the top. All right, public class repository. Now, this one has got a T in it, and this one is going to implement our iRepository like this. Now we're getting errors because we haven't put anything in the body yet. So if I put my mouse here, it says it doesn't implement all that stuff that we put into iRepository. We're going to put that all in right now. So that'll have that tget and the insert and the update, the delete, etc., all of that other stuff. All right, so we're going to put all that in right now. And my guess is the reason this is giving us an error here is, come on, there we go. For the potential fixes, it'll give it, oh, I thought it would give us do a using statement, but it's not. Isn't that what we called it before, was trip log context? Trip log context. No, it's not finding it, and I'm hoping it will. Let's see with this one. Okay, that's that other one. Okay. Oops. Some of the stuff that's in here should look pretty familiar to you. All right, the context, etc. And then coming in here and doing the public repository. Putting this dot here, that's optional. I'm just going to remove it. You don't have to. All right. I'm just wondering, let's see, with a trip log context, if I put in here oops, you don't do this yet. I want to see if it's going to remove the error. Using updated trip log dot models dot like that. That, okay. See this right here, this app settings lives inside of updated trip logs. All right. And it is not in models. It is not in anything. So it is in here. So I thought if I did the using updated trip log by itself like that, that it would find it and that would fix the error for this, but it's not. So I'll have to look at that and see what the problem is, because I'm not sure right now what it is. All right, let's just keep going. I'm not returning anything right now, and it's expecting a list to be returned. So let's fix that. Right. All right. This is the one I'll have to fix for tomorrow. So now all of this stuff right here, this basically everything that you're seeing in here, again, it's grabbing that from iRepository that was in here. So if I go back into here and I go to iRepository, there was the get with the ID, the get with the query options, the insert, the update, and the delete, and the save. And again, the reason that we need to put those in is because we are using that interface in here. All right, now I could have typed in something incorrectly. I'm looking for it. I don't see it now, but let's finish this up. That's probably why. There we go. All right, see if we can sift out some of the errors that are in this file because we've got quite a few. I'm hoping this is the only file right now in which we have errors. Doesn't look like it, but let's look here. All right, I'm gonna go back up to the top here and take a look. All right, I got rid of this error. I went down and in the suggestions, I said implement interface. So that fixed that. Generate trip log context in a new file. I thought we already had trip log context. Looking through my stuff here. And we have not created that file yet. That's the problem with that one. So let's create that. And that'll fix these two errors. What else do I have in here? Well, that should be a little U. That fixed that. Doesn't like something here. I think there's a void there. Okay. Almost everything's out of here. Hmm. Well, that one I'll have to look at. I'm cutting down the errors, as you can see, as we're going through here. That's not too bad, to be honest with you. All right. Let's go in and let's write the trip log context file. That's just about it for today then. That is a class. All right. This will have to, you already know this, it'll have to inherit from DB context. We don't have any seed data in here, but I'm not worried about that. It's the same stuff. We've done all this earlier. I'm wondering if I put in this, let's see. There we go. Make this a little smaller. There. That's everything. Now I'm going to leave that there for a minute or two. And I'm amazed at the fact that we've got 2 errors and I don't know how many lines we typed in today, but it was quite a few. So let me make this a little bigger. I'll leave the first half up here for a minute and then I'll move it down. All right, so we have two errors in here and they're both in the repository.cs file. Want to see before we finish up if we can fix those two errors. Right. Somehow it just threw some extra code on there. But so I think the only thing that's erroneous right now is this. So if we can try to figure out what that problem is, right? If I can figure out what this error is now, and if then we've got two um, warnings for possible null references in our repository.cs file. I'm going to leave those alone. But if we can get this to work where there are no errors in it, then what I would like to do is to save everything, go into the NuGet package manager, do an add migration, see if we can build the database, and then do an update database to see if it'll actually create it for us. It won't as long as we've got an error in here, which is right here. According to what I've done, that code is right, but it's still giving us an error message. And it's saying options is not null here. the IntelliSense is finding it here, but it's just saying that it might not be null. I'm trying to figure out what the problem is right there. All right, everything else is correct. So I'm just going to call it a period here. It is just about, well, it's almost 2:30. I'm going to try to find out the answer to this error. And then tomorrow, what we'll do is we will attempt, like I said, to build the database. And if we can figure out this error, then build the database, then go in and write the controllers, and we'll have I think it's 3 different controllers that we're going to write. We're going to have, as we always do, we're going to have our home controller. We'll also have a manage controller and a trip controller. All right, then when we get done, we will go to views and we will have, our home folder and views, our manage folder and views, and our trip folder and views. Plus we will write our underscore layout.cs HTML file. So I'd say we've got a good start on this and probably got it about half done. All right, thanks for sticking around with me. I'll pick it up tomorrow starting at 12:05. I'll see you then.